Hello everyone and welcome to this podcast In Shape to Grow on the English version. This podcast is to inspire entrepreneurs to prioritize their health. In today's episode, I'm very happy to introduce you to Kevin Kotam. Kevin is an international speaker, an executive coach with many years of experience, but he has also an amazing first career that you will discover in this interview. Indeed, Kevin is a nomadic leader. He wrote a book, The Nomadic Mindset, to help leaders of the 21st century to lead without staying too much on the same place. It's a very interesting concept, and I really enjoy reading his book. Kevin has traveled in many countries, and I met him when he was based in Brussels. He's actually from Canada. He was living in Singapore for many years, and now he's moving to another country. So at the beginning of the interview, we will talk about a little tradition from the Berber. When Kevin was studying the nomadic lifestyle, he went to the desert and met Berber in their nomadic lifestyle. And he learned about the tea tradition ceremonies, where you have 3 cups. The first cups help you to connect with your guest. And then with the second cup, you can go in a deeper conversations. And you finish with the last cup to end the conversations. So Kevin is taking this tradition as a metaphor to explain how meeting should be done today. With the first part where you connect with the team, the crew, the audience, and then a second period during which you explain the different problems, and then during the third part of the meeting, you explain the solutions. So I hope you're gonna get inspired by this wise man as much as I did. Enjoy this interview. If you have any questions, drop them on the comment section. And before our next English version of this podcast, take care. Hello, Kevin. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm just waking up here on the West Coast, and everything seems to be starting up well.
Yes, exactly. I'm very happy to have you as my guest. I remember one of our first talk back in Brussels in beginning of 2000 when you were in Brussels, and since then you wrote a few books, and one book that I reviewed a few days ago to prepare this interview attracted a little my attention because you were talking about this Berber tradition of the tea ceremony, and you talk about this very interesting comparison between the tea ceremony where you have 3 cups of tea and how to lead a meeting. And you said the first step is setting the direction and then solving some problems, and then the third cup is the final solution. And surprisingly, this podcast is based a little bit on these 3 cups. So I'm very happy to see that, because the first part will be about your career, so setting the connection with your story. And then we're going to solve a few problems, because you're going to talk about what your routine are to stay healthy. And then the final solution will be your advice about stress management. So I thought it was a very nice link between your book that we're going to talk about and this interview. So
great.
Do you mind if I start by explaining a little bit your career?
Sure, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You were born in Canada on the West Coast, and you did your first trip to UK when you were 11 years old. And it was like a very inspiring trip for you, because you realized how fascinating traveling was. But today we know you as an international speaker. And I found out that you study actually biology at the University of Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
And then you become an international choreographer in ice skating. So what did happen between the biology choice and your first career as a choreographer? Or what moment, because we're going to talk about your first book also, the haha moment, but what was the moment you decide to go from a biologist to ice skating choreography?
Yeah. Okay. So that's it. Actually, it's kind of interesting, I think, and a lot of people get stuck in the same trap, I think, with families. So I was a competitive figure skater, and I was a Canadian ice dance champion back in the dark ages, and I was. My first trip was to England, as you said, but then my first teaching job was in Australia. So when I quit when I was 19, I moved to Australia. Couldn't have gone any further away at that point in the planet, and because there was very few airlines that would fly for on a daily basis. In fact, nobody flew on a daily basis in those days. It was maybe 3 times a week from Canada. And but what happened is that I had started my university when I was still as a skater at UBC. And I was very interested in science, biology especially. But I also had thought in my mind that my father always wanted to be a doctor. And so I thought that's what they wanted me to do. Well, interestingly enough, I went along that way. When I was in Australia, my father died. And so then I decided it was going to be, yes, I now need to go into medicine. So my first step was pre-med, which was doing biology. And I came back to Canada after he died, and I started to teach, and I also went to university. So it was really a heavy load because I was teaching not in Victoria where the university was, but I was teaching up island. And I would go, 2-3 times a week. And so it was really difficult to do that. But I had to do it because that was the only way I could afford to go to school and to university. So I studied, and I realized that I'm not very good at science. Okay. And I was I had to take a year off so that I could not a year off, but I took a short year of only 3 courses, because I had to focus on physics, and I didn't know anything about physics. I had to do some really technical courses, which were really hard for me. And so anyway, what happened, push came to shove at the very end, the last year, I just started to freak out. I thought, I can't even go to do the medical exam. And I said to my mom, I said, I'm not going to take this road. And she said, that's okay. I said, it's okay? Yeah. I said, I thought that's what you wanted me to be, and Dad wanted me to do this. And she said, no, you can do it anything you want. Wow. And I went, I was like, oh my God, what a realization, it was so, what I had been doing, I felt I had been wasting time in some ways. Anyway, and then I just took off, and I started to do, I wanted to dance. And so I studied in New York, and then I danced at the Moulin Rouge in Paris. And then I came back, and I decided to go back to university again and to do a kinesiology degree, because I wanted to combine dance and skating. So I wanted to deal with flexibility, yes, because flexibility was so important to me. And in those days, in the early 80s, it wasn't even talked about very much in most sports, flexibility and how important that was for your body. And I'd already taken Pilates when I was in New York and studying at the main studio in the late 70s, early 80s. Wow. And I loved it. And so I went back to skating when I was in Ottawa, where you're living. And that was my first place to go at the Gloucester Skating Club. And I just started to choreograph, but I would also do flexibility and dance classes for the skaters. And so I created a variety of different artistic aspects and also well-being at that time, because I believed that the flexibilities was so important for their, not only their appearance, like dancers on ice, but it was also important for their whole physical being.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned flexibility of the body, but you just had to reach this new career. You had to be sufficiently flexible from the mind. And we're going to talk also with the latest book you wrote, that the body and the mind have a very important connection. And when you can reach the two and work on two of them, it's very where you can find the flow. And we're going to also talk about this later on. So yeah, you did a very amazing career as a choreographer. You were the creator of the '88 Olympic Winter Games in Calgary. You also did the Energia Holiday on Ice show in the mid 2008, 2010, around this period. But on one of your biography, I discovered this little part of your life where you had a very hard time as a choreographer, because you were fired from a show, and it started a very hard time for you until you found this book, The Artist's Way, that really helped you to get out of this hard and difficult situation. Do you think this book, and from this book, you start again working as a choreographer, and you realize a show that really transformed the crew, and even that person that I saw the testimonial saying that he saw your show 50 times because it was helping him to heal. That's an amazing how heart can heal. And do you think by reading this book, The Artist's Way, writing your book, The Nomadic Mindset, was like a giving back, because you had so much from this book that writing a book with what you've discovered about nomadic mindset would help maybe other person to flow a little bit better in life?
You've done a lot of research. Wonderful, David. The Artist's Way helped me, you know. Let me start back again. Is it certain books trigger you?
Yeah.
Right? And you don't know where they're going to come from.
Yeah.
So just to let you know a little bit more about that story and how it came about, because I had gone into a show for Disney on Ice and I got fired from it because the producer didn't like what I was doing. And ultimately he had said in the moment that he fired me, I should have listened to you, that I had said the only thing that I wanted to do, which was the original show I was contracted for, which was the Lion King on Ice. And then when they didn't get the rights for that, then I said, well, I'm not sure if I'm the person for you, because I don't really like Disney, to tell you the truth. And but he said, no, you're the right person. And so for a variety of reasons, we do things and we don't listen to ourselves.
Yeah.
And that was a wonderful experience of where I didn't listen to my body telling me that this was the wrong project for me. Once I had changed over to a variety of different stories of Disney, all of a sudden I got sciatica, really, really bad. And I was sitting on planes and I was traveling all over the place, and we were doing music and I couldn't stand. I had to lay on the floor to do things. I just couldn't. It was so horrible. And I mean, that was like, knock, something's wrong here.
Yes. Even with your practice of Pilates and flexibility, and that's a very hard way for your body to tell you that something is not right.
It's so true. And so I still didn't listen, right? And so I went to therapy and it went away and all was fine. And then and there was all sorts of problems starting to happen. And And then I remember we were doing some pre-production in Victoria, and I had a party the night before we were to leave to go to Florida to work on the show. And I said to my mother, I remember these words, I can't wait until this project is over. Oof. And 3 weeks later, it was over.
It was over.
But at the same time, I have to say that I created an incredible, I felt ambiance, you know, with all of the skaters and all of the departments, and they all worked together, and they were all working towards the best possible show. Yeah, so anyway, what happened was that I you know, he told me to walk out the back door and not say anything to anyone. So that's when my life sort of took a big dive.
Yeah.
And you know, skating is a small business, and so consequently it spreads fast, the news, and I thought, this is the end. I will never get another job again in this world of skating. And so what happened was I really felt that I had lost my soul. I felt I'd lost everything inside of me. I felt dead. And so I thought, okay, you know, I'm going to take the time off, and I'm just going to refocus and to see what comes from this.
Yeah.
So one day I was having coffee with a friend of mine, and I was telling her about what was happening and what happened. And she says, you know, there's this wonderful book called The Artist's Way, and it's by Julia Cameron. And she said, it's really fantastic. So anyway, I bought it and I started to go through the process of it. And it's a 12-step focus. And it shifted me completely. It opened up my avenues. It opened up my creativity. It opened up my mind. It opened up. And what happened was, the ultimate part of that was that I ended up finding my guru, which was fascinating how that happened. Is that during this period of doing the book, I thought, oh, a friend of mine, I know he follows a guru. And so I'm quite curious, because I felt that maybe Julia Cameron had more of a spiritual background, and also the whole book was very much so. And so I asked, I said, can I have a chat with you? But how did that happen? I was walking along the street one day, and I was on a corner, and I said to myself, I need to have a chat with Greg about this. And I turned to my left, and he was standing right next to me. Now, how is that possible? You know, so it was very strange. And so I said, I need to talk to you about your guru. And he said, let's have a talk now if you have time. And I said, sure, let's do it. And so anyway, then he invited me to an event, which was the next night, which was a Mahashivratri. And it was a very, very important event in the guru lineage. And so I went, and it was fascinating to me. And that's when I started to meditate. Wow. And that was the beginning of that. And I have meditated since then. Anyway, it led me to a month later going and meeting the guru. Wow. So all of these things happened very, very strangely. And when I went to meet the guru, which was in Sitges in Spain, it was an interesting awakening. And it also started to shift my life, you know, and how do I say shift? It shifted in opening, expanding my mind and my heart and my whole being. And another interesting part about this was sometimes you have to be very careful what you ask for. Right? And that's this whole story, is you have to be careful what you ask for sometimes. And so they usually have one of these events, which is called an intensive. It's like a 2 or 3 day meditation intensive. And they were having that. And I said, no, I think that I've had enough to think about over the next few weeks. And they said, okay, you know, the guru will be in London at the beginning of May at this point in time. And I said, oh, what days? It was May 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So when I backtracked this a second. When I was making my flights, two, which was a few months before, I wanted to come back to Canada on May 3rd. Could not get a flight. On May 4th, I couldn't get a flight. On May 5th, I couldn't get a flight. But on May 6th, I could get a flight. And so I thought, this is really weird what's going on now. It's like, why am now to take this course in that time in London when I was trying to get out? So, whatever these messages are, I just flowed with them. And I think that changed a lot of stuff for me. And it changed the trajectory of how I see the world. And it changed the trajectory of the expansion that I believe is vital for all of us. And they only come from accidents a lot of the time that we get ourselves into. But at the same time, and that's one of the reasons I wrote my first book, Aha Mother's Pearls, was these accidents are actually aha moments. My body was telling me something, but I wasn't listening. And I had the choice of to do so or not to. And all of these things are aha moments, which are moments of realization, which are put in your way for you to go, what is that? And it's a gift. And even though my book is about my realizations from around the world, it's a book to say we all have them. And we have a choice to either listen to the moments and find out what they mean or not. And those were, and I think those moments are very important to our health. Not only mental well-being, but our whole being, mental, spiritual, mind, body, soul, so.
Yeah, because when these moments are arriving, we need to stop whatever is going on in our life, because there's always, especially today, there's always something to do and our mind is always running. But then we need to stop and just think a little bit about what's happening, what you did with your sciatica and when you did in other time of your life. And so this book, your first book, The Aha Moments, is in 2012. And the year after, you did a TED Talk in Ghent, in Belgium, about in the zone, in the flow, talking about the experience you had with Christy Yamaguchi. I hope I'm telling her name rightly. And you talk about being in the zone with the connection and the alignment between the mind, the body, and the spirit, with visualization, breathing, and meditation. And I thought in these 7 minutes, I'm going to share the link in the description of this podcast, because I thought in 7 minutes, you summarize some very important tools to find this flow and work on a daily basis to be more aware and not running like a rat in a cage. So did you work with these tools to reach, did you have this vision at that time about what you are doing today? Because you are traveling all the time. You have a second book, The Nomadic Mindset, that is a very amazing book, I think, because I like when we can use different topics and mix them together. And I was very touched by the definitions of Romain Simonel on the definition of the nomad being the kind of human mind that is less attached. So in your few last years, did you vision yourself like you are today, or are you on the same, are you balanced between a vision and what's come to your life?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think that I'm in a transition again today. So, and I think we're constantly going through transitions if we want to, and to observe them. So let me backtrack on that, but it might be helpful in this story, is that when my mother passed away in 2015, I realized that I was continuing to come back to Victoria at the same time every year. And I didn't have a reason for coming back necessarily, because I came back to see her, and most of all, and the rest of my family, but a lot to spend time with her. And one time at the end of 2017, I came back and I looked out the window of the airport in Vancouver and I went, oh my God, it is cold out there. And I just come from Singapore, so I was, hot, and so all of a sudden what popped into my mind, you don't have to be here anymore at this time of year because you're a global nomad. And I went, global nomad? What is that? And so that was a trigger. That was a seed which led me into the next thing. And then the next piece is that I always felt that if something didn't happen wasn't successful in my current career as a speaker or as a coach or whichever, I could always go back to skating. But I realized how trapped I was in that particular thought. It's because I wasn't relevant anymore and I hadn't even spent any time in skating. But I did go to the national championships in Ottawa in 2017. And when I was there, even though it was such a wonderful time to see all of my friends and my colleagues and past students that I worked with, it was really glorious, and to see great skating, I felt like a voyeur looking into a world that was so far away from me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like going to a class reunion and you're seeing all these people that you don't even remember, and everybody's aged and that they've all gone into something. It's like, whoa, where am I?
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was what the trigger that I needed. When I left the ice rink that night, I looked up at the stars and it was really cold and it was clear sky. And I realized it had gone, completely gone. And so what that gone allowed me to open to anything new.
Wow.
And I think that is what's important, is we hold on to stuff so tight that we can't allow new to come in, because we're holding on. Holding on. We're not letting go. You're trapped in some old thinking or operating system, as I would like to call it. And you're not able to fully commit. So anyway, what happened was 2 months later, the concept of my book, The Nomadic Mindset, came into fruition with my work with my mentor. And he said, okay, what would the name of the book be? And I said, it's The Nomadic Mindset, Never Settle for Too Long. And he was like, wow, I've never heard anybody talk about this before. So, well, what does that mean? And then he said, well, you're going to have to do research because it's a leadership book. And I said, oh, okay, that's fine. And then he said, you have to speak to at least 100 executives, and you certainly have to go and spend time with at least 3 nomadic cultures. And I said, oh, can I not do that on Google or go to the library? And he said, no, that's added, but no. You need to go and spend time with them, and you need to find stories, and you need to find about their behaviors, and you need to find out what is it that makes them tick, that is this nomadic mindset that you're trying to put together as a collaboration or integration between contemporary and the old. And so I did, and it changed my life, the way I look at not only nomadic cultures, and I also look at the world today, of how much we are still in a very old operating system, which is not useful for today, and what we see are the challenges and complexities of today. And not to say that nomads have the answer, but they have a simple answer, which we keep forgetting. And but you talk about what Roman said, and I have to say, you would have loved this conversation with him. You would have. We sat at the Grand Mosque in Paris, and we had 3 hours of him just talking about Berbers and talking about anthropology, because he's this great anthropologist that his specialty is in Berbers. And it was just like, my eyes were like, whoa. My heart was so open. It was just amazing talk. And so, that was really a beginning of the excitement,
Mm.
was him. And,
Yeah,
and
I
then just went
totally
from there.
understand. I totally understand because I found your book just fascinating, and the way you talk about the connections between the nomads and the leadership. That's something that's new for me. I never been a manager or leader for a company or for anything, but it's something that's interesting somewhere in my mind. And I found in your book a lot of materials to learn and to study. So this book is really one of these books that I have. I don't have your book yet on a paper version. I have on a Kindle version because it's easier to transport. But it's one of these books that I'm gonna have on my shelves because I think books, as you said before, are amazing because you don't know where it's going to come from, and it can really help you to go a little bit further. And I hope to be able to write my own book one day because it's very something that I like to do. And you are one of the people that inspired me for that. So this was the first cup, Kevin, the setting the direction. So we know you a little bit better. So let's take the second cup together about as an international nomadic speaker, because you have been living in 15 major cities, traveled across more than 60 countries. Could you share with us some of your routine and what you do to stay healthy uh, beside all the traveling, the jet lags, the weather between Singapore, Brussels? I'm always fascinated by people arriving in Brussels because Brussels is a nice city, but it's not like what you can find in Australia or in Singapore or in other part of the world. So, what are your routine as an entrepreneur? Because when you are on stage, and you told us a few days ago that you're gonna talk and speak at the Professional Speaking Association in Paris in a few weeks. So, how do you get ready to be on stage and be focused and brilliant and with energy, or how do you do that?
Wow, you know what's really interesting, David, is that I think for all of us, these 2 years of COVID has put us into this place of where we are right now, you know, Zooming. And when we started to slowly come back and stand on stage, most of my colleagues began to say, "Oh my God, it's very different." And yes, it's what I would say it's the difference between an actor being a television actor or a theater actor. And they're very different mediums, and you see the audience in different ways, and you also have different layers. You prepare differently. You have a routine which is different in many ways. And so for me, live is where I like to be because I like to move. You know, that's my life, it's movement. And I find that being, you know, on a screen like this, it lessens some ways the impact because I think that I'm better on stage than I am on the camera. But I don't know that, but necessarily, I just feel that way. So what do I do? As far as my health is concerned, when it comes to preparation for these, is that I rehearse a lot. I write, for me as a speaker, I write my speeches and then I practice them when I'm walking. And walking is one of the things that develops so much more creativity. I don't know, it's been scientific fact that, you know, about 70% of your creativity expands when you start walking because you are releasing a lot. And your mind wanders and you go into things. So I spend time walking and working out my speeches. Once I've written them, then I try to put them on the road, so to speak, literally. And I feel what feels right and what doesn't, and then I use my phone to either change something or add some information or use different words, which I may forget by the time I get home. And it's almost like channeling in some ways. I just feel that it's that flow that is coming from you. And that is, I don't like to stop that blockage, because that's the creative flow that you need to have. And then I rehearse, and on the day, I mean, things like I drink a lot of water. I don't drink coffee. I shouldn't drink coffee the day before before. I shouldn't drink any liquor. I get enough rest over the time. And I always like to do a physical workout before I speak, because that gets me going. It also enlivens my breathing at the same time. I do some vocal exercises as well. But I also eat very lightly. I'm a vegetarian, and so that I don't eat any meat, or generally I have some fish, but not necessarily. So I'm a flexitarian, maybe perhaps in that.
For a long time, you are a flexitarian?
I started out being vegetarian around the early 90s. And so it's really 30 years now. Yeah. So, so those are some of the things. I really watch the diet at that point, and then I go off afterwards. I go, oh, I'm ready to have my sweets now and have something to drink, but it's a celebration in many ways. But the exercise is important for me, because that's, many people have not grown up as an athlete and as physical. And so it is my way to be. Yes. And it's the only thing that keeps my mind flexible, shall I say? Yeah. And what I mean by that is that if I sit for too long, like at the computer, and no physical exercise, I start to fry up in my head, and I can't even put one thing in front of the other. I just don't know what's going on. I need a release. It's like the endorphins. I need to release it all. And once I do that, it's fine. The other thing that I do for my creativity or rehearsing as well is swimming. Right. Because when I swim, I let things go. So for example, sometimes I will say to myself, you have a challenge to figure out, what is this project, or what's this thing missing in a show or a speech, for example, right now. And I say, you cannot get out of the pool until you have solved it. Wow. So sometimes it takes a while. So nice. And so then I just keep moving, and things start to flow, and I think that, that's my process. It's not everybody's process, right? And we all have our way of doing things. And I find that's the best. And as far as jet lag is concerned, as soon as I get to a place, I get to the gym as soon as possible, or go for a very long walk, so that I start to get myself acclimatized to the new. It doesn't always work, but it works pretty much.
And with time now, do you feel it's getting harder than 10 years ago? Or because of your lifestyle, you could feel that your body is sufficiently flexible? Because it's something that I really researched these last few years. It's the metabolic flexibility, where your body can train and rest, or can fast and eat, or can get to the cold or get to the warm. I know you don't like the cold. You mentioned, you asked me if Ottawa wasn't. I love the cold. I feel that this winter was pretty nice. But anyways, do you feel that you can keep this flexibility with the experience?
That's a great question as well. I think with age, it's a little less so. And now that we've had 2 years of for me, 2 years of being in COVID on a small island in Singapore, I became a settler pretty much. And I was like, oh no. And I had a really regular routine. And so I was out of the habit of traveling, and coming on the first flight was like, oh, this is unusual. You know, and I felt a bit tentative about it. I guess I just need to get warmed up to it again. But the thing is that I think that now I have to go into a new process again of remembering what that was.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have like a maximum of travel you do per year for your health, or is it really by the opportunities that you travel to Europe or to other continents? Is it something like
for me, a lot of the time is
opportunities,
and I see it all as opportunities anyway. And so that could be a variety of things. Do I travel just for, you know, to have a vacation or something like that? I try to make it all a vacation as well as work, and to, you know, piggyback. I think moving forward, though, like a lot of my colleagues have said in Singapore, that they don't want to travel as much anymore. And they don't want to do the constant moving around and sitting on planes as they used to do. And many of them have said, no, I'm not going to do this gig. You know, it's not enough money, or it's just not, I just don't feel like doing it. We can do it virtually, and that's fine. So people have moved into this space, and also attitude. But then there's others that are going, well, yeah, I can't wait to get traveling again. You know, so, but I believe that this has shared with a lot of my colleagues, there's another way of doing it that might be more beneficial, not only to their mental being, but also to their full health regime, because they know that it's not easy on their health.
Yeah, of course. Of course, the jet lag is very hard. Circadian rhythm is it's so important for health that when you switch like this, you need to have, and you had this career as a top athlete, to have the good lifestyle, to be able to move more softly with this jet lag. So what is your red lights when you feel that you're going too far, or you did this trip was a little bit too stressful? What are these red flags for you? Is it digestive? Is it the focus, as you mentioned with the screen, or do you evaluate the reaction of your body today?
I start to get irritated, and my body starts to feel really uncomfortable. And sometimes I don't listen again, and I just keep on. And I know that then I'm in trouble. Because as soon as I get up, it's like, oh, I can't move anymore. I can't even move my legs. And it's, you know, it's not good. One of the ways of doing that is having a stand-up desk, you know, which is much better. And I wish to have a stand-up desk. But red lights are losing my focus. Red lights are forcing myself then to sit there. Red lights are knowing that my body is aching. Aching. And I mean aching and just, you know, my back, because at the beginning of COVID, after sitting for so long, I have a tendency of my back is the weak part. And I had back problems. And so consequently sitting was not even that good either. So it's and then of course we couldn't go to doctors, and we couldn't do all sorts of things. And eventually I went to Pilates back again. And I have to say that it was a saving grace.
Nice. You're introducing the third cup already, but I'm just going to finish my second cup. So basically you are telling me that you're using your mind and your body has red flags. It's very interesting that that can inspire people that are listening to this podcast, that we have many red flags that can help us to see we are going on the wrong direction, at least for our health. Because as entrepreneur, if you get less focus and grumpy and less creative as a speaker, it's not good for your business. So it's very important. And I think in all businesses, the person who is doing his mission, his business, needs to take care of his health first, as you mentioned before this interview, because that's why this podcast has been created. It's to inspire entrepreneurs to put their health onto the table when they are working on their business.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, when I travel a lot and I will see, you know, a variety of people who, you know, just travel a lot, drink a lot, eat a lot, do all sorts of things. They are not being healthy to their whole being, and eventually they will crash. And they do crash eventually, and they've done it at a sacrifice. And I don't, even though I may sacrifice a little bit, but I don't want to sacrifice because it constantly comes back at me. It hits me. And I guess it's because I'm very aware of my body and I'm very aware of my mind. And now I'm very aware of my spirit.
Yes.
And so all of these things are extremely important to have the balance between them. And when I start getting very negative, for example, is that I know that something is not working properly. And then I go back and I meditate a lot. And I had COVID at one point, and I was really grateful for it. I had COVID light, so I only had the smell that was gone, but I enjoyed my isolation. It was like, oh, good, now I can meditate 3 times a day, or I can just sleep, or I can read a good book, or I could just dance around my room. It was just like, wow, okay. So that was, I enjoyed that release. I think what happens for a lot of us is that the red lights are a lot about cleansing. And when I say cleansing of all things, whether it be your food, whether it be your body, whether it be your house of stuff, whether it be your emails, whether it be your computer. It's cleansing, it's getting rid of. And that is something which is very nomadic, is very few possessions. And possessions can be everything. It doesn't have to be a commercial enterprise or a product. Possessions are our minds, possessions are our heart, possessions are all of these things. As cleansing all of them as what is so important. I mean, you know, just preparing for this last speech that I did, I don't know why I was so stressful. I was stressed like crazy, and I just thought, and I felt my heart was like, oh, well, it's so painful. I don't know if I was having a heart attack, but anyway, but that's being more dramatic. But the point is that I was very upset with myself that I was so stressed, and I'm trying to figure out the reason. And I think it comes back to the reason that I didn't listen again to some of the indications of why I was doing what I was doing. And those are triggers, those are red lights that we don't see sometimes until too late.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to so deeply listen and observe ourselves, not just be outside of ourselves, but inside. We have to turn the mirror inside. And then people say, okay, and you know, a lot of entrepreneurs say, you know, well, that's all nonsense, all nonsense. Okay, it's fine. Eventually something will happen.
Yeah, eventually.
You know, and it could be physical, it could be mental, it could be your job, it could be you lose all your money, it could be all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And all of these things happen. And it's about how do we live with them and accept them and to keep learning. I mean, we're only put on this earth to learn.
To learn, yeah.
You know, and sometimes we're just really pathetic learners. And sometimes we're great learners.
Yes,
so.
Yes, fortunately. So the third cup I would share with you was actually you started to talk about this topic is the last 2 years. So as a nomadic person, mindset, how did you live these 2 years of being stuck on a highland, as you mentioned? And how did you manage the fact that you couldn't travel. So what would be the advice you could give to entrepreneurs who feel stuck, like you were stuck on an island physically, but mentally you could still travel? But what would be your advice to entrepreneurs who feel this this anxiety of being stuck somewhere or in some situation?
Yeah, it's another great question. And I think that we all, as I said earlier, is that we all find our different methods and ways forward. And let's start with the story. And maybe that's very helpful, is that I had just finished doing, just at the beginning of COVID, I was in Namibia and I was doing some research with the Himba and the Bushmen of the Kalahari, which again was fascinating. And one of the things that my guide in Namibia said to me, because I asked him a question. I asked him, he said to me, look over there behind all those bushes and also, and the dense foliage, you'll see a family of steenboks. And I looked and I couldn't see them. And I asked him again, and he said, over there, and I still couldn't see them. And then I got really frustrated and I said, what do you see that I can't see? And he says, I look for what doesn't fit in the picture. Which became very interesting to me, as we're constantly looking at what is in our picture, but we don't see what is not in the picture.
Yeah.
Or in the, and that is part of the thing which happened for me in COVID. So when I came back and I was there, it's that everybody was rushing, getting every other products online, just transforming them into online products and just doing that. And it was crazy. It was anxiousness. It was like, whoa.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody was losing business. And I was, you know, I also lost all my business. And I went, oh. And I just come back from Namibia, and so I was just like real chill, you know. I was in the bush, so I mean, it's like, oh, I'm coming out of the bush. It's like, whoa, what is all this? And I said, you know what? I'm not going to rush. Yes, it's a problem financially, but I want to see what's missing in the gap. So what he was saying, what is not fitting in the picture? I wanted to see what's not fitting, and eventually what started to not fit, which we all came to clarity on, was the mental well-being of people. And we started to see that in organizations, that finally they were starting to look at the health and the well-being, the mental acuity, the physical, all of this of their employees, because they were stuck at home. And in Singapore, you're stuck at home with all of your family, and it's not a big home. And, you know, how do you deal with this? Because you got kids, 3 or 4 kids, and you've got the parents, and you've got everybody. It's like, how do you do this? You're going crazy, you know, and there's no way out.
No.
What happened for me was that, yes, I looked for what was in the gap. I took it slowly. And I didn't rush, and I just tried to observe as much as possible. I tried to listen to as much as possible. I figured that this was a really great place to go nomading, not only in the mind, but also go nomading in, you know, just the being, and just everything about the being and what was going on, not only for myself. And so one of the things that I realized was that when we were able to go and do a lot of walking, is that I realized that I did not know anything of Singapore, but the central business district. You know, I only knew a few things, and which most people only know. And so I found all the parks and the reservoirs and the nooks and crannies that people had never been, or very rare to be to. And just, it was so fascinating. But it was wonderful just to get into nature. And for some reason, I started to take pictures of the bark of trees. Now, that's a bit weird, perhaps, but I just became fascinated all of a sudden with this. It was like a skin. It's like, why do we have all this variety of skin? And that skin was like ourselves, where we have this variety. And so I started to that's the only saving grace that I had physically. And then once the gyms were open, then I could go back to the gym or I could swim. And so I spent a lot of time in that. But so the health aspect was spending time with a few friends, important friends. And one of the things that I did do was I called them walkie-talkies. And I would engage with people on LinkedIn and I would invite them to go for a walk. And I didn't know who they were, and we'd walk and we'd have a conversation and we would talk business, or we'd talk about the nomadic mindset because people were interested to know what is this. And so it became an exploration.
Wow.
And but I think that it taught me an awful lot of things about life, and that less is more. And that in my room that I have in the apartment that I live in, I decided that I would start getting rid of more and more things. And I got to very few things because I thought, if I'm going to eventually go back to Canada or travel, I don't want anything. I don't want many things. And so it has to be very few, meaningful, but few. And to know, so that could be how many books I would have, or, what is the equipment that I would have for doing podcasts or anything? How can it be small enough to take and light enough, but just maximize on that with lights and things. And then, but I think that it was about eating, and I'm an intermittent faster as well. And I believe in that. And I believe it gives you more energy. So I did that. And it was also a way, interestingly enough, and I will say it, is that I had to reduce the amount of spending that I did because I wasn't working so much. And I thought, this is going to be an experience. It's like, you can't just go to the shop and just buy.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm now becoming my sister, going from shop to find the cheapest item. And I did, but, and I continued even after we could just, and business started to pick up again. But it taught you lessons if you were able to learn. And if you took this time as a lesson period.
Yes.
And many people said, well, people just want to go back to normal.
Yeah.
I mean, and I that word normal gives me the shivers. It's like, what's that? What is that? I mean, I don't aspire to normality, because to me that means status quo, and that's fine for some, but I don't feel that's where our growth is in status quo. And so what happened with that is that I just kept on trying to learn and to discover inside of myself. And I learned about new products, and I learned about new, different ways for speeches, and also just different topics. And I also had to take some time away from social media. And because social media became very damaging for a lot of people, and you start to see a lot of articles around that because people were spending so much time in it, and it became destructive for many, because I could feel myself being pulled into the vortex, I'm doing fabulous things, and just, I'm the most beautiful, and, I'm this strong and whichever. And how much is that real? And it pulls you down. And so I had to take times where I would stop. And during COVID, when I had COVID, I said, okay, I'm not launching back into any of the social media until I know exactly how I want to do it. And so I believe that I have done that now, and that I'm not tied to it or trapped to it, is my new word, is trapped. So
trapped.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you very much, Kevin, for your time, for your wisdom. I really appreciate this talk, this conversation. So if people just connected with your message and your way of seeing life in general and leadership in particular, so they can, of course, buy your books, The Nomadic Mindset. They can follow you on social media, or is it still some way we can meet you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if anybody want to reach out to me, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to be with everyone. My books are on Amazon.
Yeah.
Both Aha Mother's Pearls and The Nomadic Mindset, Never Settle for Too Long. If you're interested to go further and understand a little bit more about, we've only sort of touched the surface about what is the nomadic mindset and what is a digital nomad in that sense. We never talked about that. Please reach out. I'm happy to chat and yeah.
Sure, I will put all your details and your website too, and where we can find you to follow your journey. So thank you very much, Kevin. I really appreciate it again. If anyone wants to reach Kevin, so I will put all the details in the comment section. So don't be afraid to contact Kevin for a talk. If you are in where do you give talks? Anywhere?
Well, it depends. I mean, I give talks online. I also do my own webinars and also talks. I mean, they're not as frequent. I'm hoping that they will pick up at this point in time, like keynotes and things like that. I just did one this week, and I'll do one next month, and I have a couple of more that are in the pipeline. But yeah, I'm more interested in the world of my coaching. Yes. And so I combine the two, as the speaking is one way into the coaching, and so that's how I sort of follow with it and move with it. And I will be moving to Lisbon and end of this month, so that's the next part of the journey in the new chapter. So let's see what happens. This is a transition year of movement physically, and also mentally, I believe, as well. Yeah.
So good luck for this new transition. I will follow your next journey on social media, and I hope that we can meet again in real life, because I remember this very first talk I had with you. I remember it was I think application job talk we had in the Haspera gym in Brussels. Yeah. And it was an exercise. And since then, I follow your journey, and it was a very amazing journey. So thank you very much, Kevin, for giving us your wisdom today.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, David. And also thank you for being my fitness coach many, many years ago.
Yes. You're welcome. So bye-bye, everyone. Still next week for the French guest, and next month for another interview in English. Take care, and see you soon. Bye-bye.